my name is Riley and welcome to Riley Humane. On this channel, we tell stories for animals who cannot tell them themselves. These are stories of animal abuse, cruelty, and survival. If you believe that animals deserve protection, compassion, and a voice, then you are in the right place. So please subscribe, share, and stick around because the more of us that there are speaking up, the harder it becomes to ignore the suffering. Today I'm going to tell you about Aleeta Raugust, also known as the Calgary cat killer. This case is pretty interesting because it holds the longest sentence in Canadian history for animal abuse. Before I begin, I want to warn you that the crimes committed by Aleeta Raugust are truly sickening and viewer discretion is advised. Aleeta Raugust was born December 14th of 1997. She has two brothers. I'm not sure if she is the middle child or oldest, but I know that at least one of her brothers is younger than her. She grew up with her mother in the home. I could not find any information about Aleeta's father. I'm gonna assume that he was not in the picture growing up, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. It's mentioned several times within the court documents that Aleeta had a chaotic home environment as a child and was also exposed to trauma at a very early age. Aleeta showed signs of mental illness as a young child and may have been sexually assaulted at some point as well. To me, it sounds like she had a pretty rough upbringing, but this would not excuse what Aleeta would go on to do in her adult life. Before I begin, I want to be clear that I will not be giving out names of Aleeta's family members, as these crimes belong to Aleeta alone. And had it not been for Aleeta's mother, who played a big part in this case, Aleeta might still be walking free, harming more animals. Aleeta's first crime was committed in Calgary, Canada in the year of 2018. Aleeta had just gone through a bad breakup and she had recently adopted a cat at that point. There's no information on this cat as far as its name, coloring, or gender, but we do know that she had recently adopted it and began to take her frustrations out on this cat. Aleeta said that every time she saw this cat, it reminded her of a man that no longer loved her. The abuse began when Aleeta would leave for work every day. She started putting the cat in a carrier and stuffing the carrier with blankets so that the cat could not move. Whenever Aleeta would return home from work and she found that the cat had moved at all, she became very angry and began harming the cat in an unspecified way. This abuse is just so sad to me. You have this cat that really didn't do anything wrong, just being stuffed in a carrier every day for at least 8 hours while the owner's at work. This is a person that's supposed to feed, love, and care for you, but instead you're being left like this to the point where you can't even move. And if you do move, your owner's getting upset with you. And to make matters worse, Aleeta admitted that whenever she would hurt this cat, it would still give her affection, and that just made her angrier. This would be the first cat that Aleeta would choke. Thankfully, this baby did survive and was dumped in a park in December of 2018. I'm not sure what happened after the cat was dumped, but since it's noted within this case, I like to believe that this cat was eventually recovered by someone. This was only the first crime committed by Aleeta and the beginning of a long timeline of inflicting pain upon animals. Aleeta would not commit another crime until nearly 3 years later on December 15th of 2021. Aleeta obtained a kitten from an unknown source, and unlike her first victim, she did give this cat a name. This victim's name is Sammy, and he was a Siamese kitten. Aleeta tortured Sammy in pretty awful ways and admits to sitting on him, spraying his eyes with hairspray, and even hitting him with a long stick until he could no longer move. Aleeta had roommates at the time who she was scared might hear Sammy screaming, so she would also cover his mouth while she committed these acts. One night when beating Sammy, Aleeta broke 2 of his legs. She said that hearing Sammy's screams traumatized her in a whole nother way. If the sound of this cat's screams traumatized her, the person that's beating this cat, I cannot imagine how this tiny little kitten must feel. Again, this is someone that this cat trusts that is now inflicting pain on them for no reason. Aleeta contacted the police afterwards and a veterinarian. However, Aleeta never showed up to the veterinarian's office and lied about ownership of the kitten. It's well documented that Sammy did survive this torture. However, we do not know where he went after that. If I had to guess what happened to Sammy afterwards, my guess is that at some point he probably went to an animal shelter with an animal rescue. When I worked in animal control, animal abuse victims were often hidden away from the public eye and eventually released to new homes, but that typically wasn't documented publicly. When Aleeta realized that the animals she tortured were afraid of her, it only angered her more. Sadly, Sammy would be the last cat to survive the hands of Aleeta Raugust. Before I dive deeper into the story, I need to tell you about a website called Kiki. I feel like I have to talk about this a bit because if you're an American like me, you have probably never heard of this site, and it's pretty prevalent in this case. Kiki is an online classifieds website and prides itself on being Canada's most trusted and loved marketplace. After looking around on this site, it kind of reminds me of Craigslist in the way that it works. People list items often used for resale so that other people can purchase them. Unfortunately, this website is also used for rehoming, selling of pets. As I'm filming this episode, there are over 4,887 cats and kittens listed on Kiki. And Kiki is where Aleeta would go on to find her next victim, Zeus. Zeus was purchased off of Kiki for $400 in June of 2022. He was only 4 weeks old at the time he was purchased. Aleeta did keep Zeus for around 4 to 5 months before strangling him to death and throwing him away in a trash can outside of her basement. It's unclear if Zeus was abused prior to this, but Aleeta says that she killed him because she did not want him to be scared of her after she hurt him. During police questioning and the trial itself, Zeus is the only animal that Aleeta shows any remorse for. Aleeta even stated that she has never had another cat like Zeus and that she misses him. Zeus makes me particularly sad because Aleeta did get him when he was such a young kitten. I mean, he was separated from his siblings and probably wasn't even weaned completely at 4 weeks old, only to be killed brutally by the one person you're supposed to be able to trust. Zeus was murdered between October and November of 2022. Aleeta's next victim was an unnamed female ragdoll who she also purchased off of Kiki for $200 to $300. Aleeta had this cat for about a month before killing her on October 9th of 2022. Unfortunately, this cat went through a significant amount of abuse in Aleeta's care and was kicked very often. These kicks were often so hard that they left holes in the walls of Aleeta's apartment. This cat was obviously pretty scared of Aleeta and was running from her at the time that she was murdered via strangulation. It's pretty sickening. In the court documents, it mentions that after murdering this cat, Aleeta cried and cried and cried and held its body until it went cold and hard. Instead of disposing of this cat's body privately or respectfully, she placed this cat's body onto the neighbor's picnic table because she wanted to see how the neighbors would react when they found the cat's deceased body. The next day, Aleeta admits to watching as a bird plucked out the cat's eyes. As if it wasn't already sick enough that she abused this cat to the point that it was already fearful of her at the time of its death, but she strangled this cat and then gave it no respect even in the end. I mean, what kind of person finds any pleasure in watching others make such a horrific discovery? It's just so sick. On November 12th of 2022, Aleeta adopted yet another kitten off of Kiki. This kitten was also unnamed, and we don't know its gender, but we do know that it was a tortoiseshell kitten. It's unclear how long she had this kitten before deciding to end its life, but she attempted to strangle it and went to dump its body in the alley behind her basement. While dumping its body, she realized that the cat was still alive, so she stomped its head into the snow. There's some pretty gruesome details about this kitten's death, as noted by Aleeta, but I'm not going to go into this. However, this kitten's body was found and would be the start of an investigation that included Calgary police, Calgary Humane Society officers, and a forensic veterinarian. In December of that same year, 2022, Aleeta went on a killing spree. She murdered an 8-week-old kitten whom she went on to strangle. She did not dispose of this kitten's body for several weeks, but when she did, it was thrown into the same alley behind her home where it was recovered on June 28th of 2023. A necropsy was done on the body and showed that the kitten had suffered blunt force trauma to multiple areas of its body. Compression of the body caused a puncture of the lungs by broken ribs. There were mass contusions to the lungs and bruising to the liver. These injuries caused significant pain and suffering prior to death, which took at least 10 minutes. Aleeta did murder another kitten around this time, a black and white male kitten who she also got off of Kiki. Aleeta claims to only have strangled this kitten before tossing him out into the snow, but an necropsy was also done on him, which uncovered that his true cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, chest, and limbs. His face was smashed after being stomped into the snow. The last kitten murdered in December was black and white. It was also beaten and strangled. The necropsy revealed a minimum of 3 incidents would be required to produce the pattern seen. Point of impact was definitively in the caudal aspect of the right side of the skull, causing fracture of the parietal bone, a second over the left dorsal skull between the eye and the ear, a third to the base of the neck and occipital region. There was profound suffering and distress caused by strangulation. This caused breathlessness, which is considered one of the most distressing negative affective states for animals. Aleeta placed this last kitten's body in a food bag and left it on her neighbor's porch. Days later, Aleeta admitted to her mother that she had killed a kitten and was suffering from a mental crisis. Aleeta's mother then contacted Calgary police and reported this crime. Her mother shared that Aleeta was having an emotional breakdown and she was apprehended under a Form 10 mental health warrant and taken to the hospital. While being transported to the hospital, Aleeta informed the officer that she had killed a kitten earlier and said, and I quote, "I have a problem with hurting animals and you should do something about that." Aleeta was released from the hospital prior to police questioning, only to kill yet another innocent cat. This was a pregnant cat who was given away for free due to the family having allergies. She hit this cat on the head and it was able to escape from her initially, which angered Aleeta. The cat was captured and kicked to death. This was Aleeta's last victim. Aleeta Raugust was taken into police custody after admitting some pretty concerning things to her probation officer while in the hospital. She told her probation officer that she was going to set fire to her former residence and hoped there would be people inside so he could watch them burn. The probation officer then went on to call police as he felt like the threat was real. Raugust was then interviewed by police and stated that, and I quote here, "I'm getting so angry and I'm starting to fantasize about hurting people when I'm angry. I don't want to fantasize about that, but I have a plan if I'm released from here, and that's why the doctors won't let me go. It's all because I want to do. All I want to do is go buy a bunch of weed and smoke that, get an extra large pizza and eat that, and then I want to go get some kerosene and a box of matches and set my building on fire and be in the room when the boiler explodes." Aleeta was then taken into police questioning where she admitted to all the killings and abuse we've mentioned this far, as well as the threat made. The Calgary Humane Society, Calgary Police Department, and Forensic Veterinarian mentioned prior all played a massive role in the trial as it presented evidence of the abuse, which ultimately led to the charges being taken seriously. Aleeta pled guilty and was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison for 1 count of uttering threats and 9 counts of killing, maiming, and or causing unnecessary pain and suffering to 8 kittens and a pregnant cat. This is the longest sentence for animal abuse in Canadian history, but it still doesn't feel like enough. Remember, Aleeta didn't just murder these cats, she tortured them prior. Initially, Justice Mike Dinkle sought 12 years for Aleeta, but decided that this sentence would be too crushing for a youthful offender, and Aleeta was 26 at the time of her sentencing. Still, many believe that Aleeta is likely to reoffend after being released, including her mother. This is the letter that Aleeta's mom wrote to the court. "I am left with utter sadness and remorse to write you in regards to my daughter, Aleeta Ann Raugust. Thank you in advance for considering my words. I take responsibility that Aleeta did not have a picture-perfect life. I was a young mother, having her at the age of 20 years old. I grew up with my daughter. However, I assure you, Aleeta's life was full of love, opportunity, and hope. I understand it takes a village to raise a child, and I accepted all family, friends, and the resources available to me to raise her. From a young age, it was clear Aleeta was different from other peers. She had more difficulty fitting into everyday life and activities and required extra support. Although through this difficulty, Aleeta was also a top scholar with literally the ability to do anything she chose. We, her family, consistently sought out external resources to support her. These efforts were always met with resistance and struggle. We were always left with a sense of dissatisfaction and disappointment that we could not meet her needs. I, as her mother, am searching for reasonable explanations offered this court to you to defend her crimes. I have none. I am horrified, full of shame and guilt, my community, and to the Calgary Police Service. I witnessed 2 Calgary police officers with tears in their eyes as they shared with me the true horrific nature of her crimes. I feel absolutely terrible that they had to investigate and handle this. After calling the Calgary Police Service and reporting what I knew of, I have personally been faced with so much vitriol, hate, threats, and abuse online that has made me at times fear for my own safety. How can I ask the general public to understand the horrific nature of her crimes when I myself cannot? I understand why the community is so angry, and they have every right to be. Before I left town on a 2-week vacation that I am writing to you out of the country, I decided to go and see Aleeta. I had expected, since I had not seen her in months, that I would have seen some remorse from her, a cry for help and apology. There was none of this. I saw only darkness in her eyes. The only thing Aleeta was concerned about was where he would sleep if he was released. I fear that if he was released, he would commit more horrific crimes, stepping up her game to ensure he has a home, which is a goal, and seems to find where he finds comfortability. For this reason, I beg of the court to remand my daughter Aleeta to prison where he can access the help he clearly requires. Our family cannot handle another crisis. The cleaning up of this mess is already a huge challenge. I am currently seeking therapy twice a week for the last 7 months, attempting to reconcile what has taken place. While I've come to accept that this isn't my fault, the healing has not even truly begun. I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you. He wrote that letter to the judge, but he also made a post on Twitter, which is pretty interesting. I think this is interesting because even Aleeta's mother believes that he should have served the full sentence. What do you think? Was 6 years too long, too short? Personally, I wish it was longer. Especially people who have known Aleeta her whole life are scared of her, including her own mother. However, there is still plenty to celebrate, as this case set a new standard for animal abuse cases in Canada. What do you think? Was 6 years too long or too short? In my opinion, I wish it was longer. I mean, if Aleeta's own mother is scared of what's going to happen when he gets released, then how should the general public feel? This case set a new standard in Canadian history, and maybe thanks to the strides that were taken with this case, maybe we'll see longer sentencing to animal abusers in the future. Far too often, animal abusers get off the hook with short sentencing if they even get sentenced at all. These animals deserve justice for the crimes that were committed against them. I want to close this video out with a warning about rehoming animals on classifieds websites. This is not the first case, nor is it going to be the last, where an individual was able to obtain their victims off of a website like Kijiji. I mean, think about it. These websites operate off the basis of strangers interacting with other strangers to get rid of used items. Animals deserve more than to be pawned off like grandma's used couch. While I know there is an ongoing animal overpopulation crisis, I just still believe that there could be safeguards put in place to protect these animals during rehoming. I mean, think about how different the outcome could have been for these cats and kittens if the individuals selling or giving away these animals had any sort of application process or asked the right question. If the individuals who rehomed or sold these animals to Aleeta had asked any further questions or any kind of application, I'm just certain that the outcome probably would have been a little bit different. Could that have been enough to scare off Aleeta from even trying to obtain these animals? These animals deserve people who truly care about them and will rehome them with great care. But what do you think? Should individuals be allowed to sell, give away animals on websites like Kijiji? What safeguards could be put in place by private citizens wishing to rehome their animals? Let me know in the comments. That is all I have for you guys today. Please take a moment and go watch some cute animal videos, as this case was pretty hard. But thank you for listening and being a part of the solution. See you next time on Riley Humane.